Got UFC 315 this weekend, May 10th in Montreal, Canada. We got a couple title fights. Belal Muhammad taking on Della Maddalena for the men's welterweight division. We got Valentina Shevchenko against Manon Fiorot for the women's flyweight title. I'm going to be breaking down the entire card for you guys, starting from the bottom of the prelims all the way up to Belal Muhammad taking on Della Maddalena for the men's welterweight championship. So let's start with that first prelim. We got JeongYeong taking on Daniel Santos. Santos is a Chute Box Diego Lima guy. We know he's pretty talented, but also been pretty inconsistent. Just recently, he pulled out of his fight with Davy Grant, which was supposed to be a banger. I was actually excited for that fight, but I'm not sure what was going on with him. Maybe he couldn't make weight, and now he's moving up to 145 pounds, where he takes on JeongYeong, who looked really, really good in his first couple fights, and then had that fight with Hyder Emil where he just got blitzed and his chin held up for a while, but then after the ref was forced to step in and call the fight. So that gave him his second loss professionally, and I think this is a good bounce back spot for JeongYeong. He's very technical, and he should be the bigger fighter here with Daniel Santos coming up to 145 pounds. Just too many unknowns with Daniel Santos. I just feel like the more consistent guy here is JeongYeong, and that's who I'm going to be picking. Should be able to mix it up, should be able to just pick him apart on the feet, wherever the fight goes. I think he can defend takedowns if Daniel Santos tries to get his jiu-jitsu game going, and ultimately I see him winning a decision. Moving on to the next fight. Here we got a couple light heavyweights going at it. We got Modestas Bukauskas against Aiemann Cutelaba. Both guys coming off a KO win and a submission win. They were both very impressive in their last fights. I believe they fought on the same card. Rafael Cachoeira, wasn't too impressed with him. I feel like he might not even be UFC level, so don't really know what you're getting with Modestas Bukauskas. He's been a little up and down here, taking a loss from Vitor Petrino. Aiemann Cutelaba, on the other hand, his record doesn't look the cleanest, but you always know what you're going to get with Aiemann Cutelaba. He's an absolute dog who goes out there and puts on a fight. So this guy, if you're a betting man, you want to put your money on him. You know he's going to be fighting for your money. He's been training at Extreme Couture, so you know he's getting good reps in with other light heavyweights on the roster. As far as a pick goes for this fight, I would not too confident in like a side. I would say Aiemann Cutelaba. I really like this fight to go under whatever rounds it is. It's probably going to be under 1.5 rounds. As far as the betting line goes, so I would take that. I would also like Aiemann Cutelaba here. I think he can mix up the wrestling with Modestas Bukauskas. If he keeps it at range, he might just get picked apart. Modestas is definitely the more technical guy, but Aiemann Cutelaba is more of the dog that you're going to be getting. He's going to be out there swinging wildly and looking to connect. So I always like to take that type of fighter, especially when we know his chin is pretty good. He can hang in there and hopefully land a KO or get it to the ground, use that wrestling, and hopefully edge out a victory. Alright, moving on to the next fight here. We got Erslan against Navajo Stirling. And this one's pretty interesting. We have seen a lot of undefeated fighters go down recently, and I honestly could see Navajo Stirling getting fraud checked here. He's just way too untested. Really hasn't fought anyone great besides, I guess, Tuco Tacos, if you want to consider him great. I wouldn't, but then we got, on the other hand, Erslan, who's been grinding at American Top Team lately. Just like the work that he's been putting in lately, even though he lost a close decision to Aiemann Cutelaba, who was fighting on the fight before this. But I just think, as far as the betting line goes on this one, Navajo Stirling's getting a little bit too much respect for what we haven't seen from him in the UFC. He's a city kickboxing guy, so it's obviously you're going to get good striking, technical striking, but we really haven't seen anyone test his wrestling yet, his ground game. What does it look like when he is getting shot on in the third round and doesn't really have much left? We could really see him fade. And I like my chances here with Ivan Erslan, who's hungry for a win after that split decision loss, and I think he can get it done. Navajo Stirling, there's a chance he goes out there and picks him apart for 3 rounds, but I like the chances with Ivan Erslan here. I think he can get it done, being the more experienced fighter, MMA fighter, as we saw recently with Bo Nickel getting fraud checked. I think it's a similar situation here. Navajo Stirling just doesn't have enough experience yet, and I think Ivan Erslan can take advantage of that by wrestling, mixing it up a little bit, and he's also confident enough on the feet to keep it standing and not just shoot blind takedowns. So I'm going to take my shot with the underdog here and pick Ivan Erslan. Alright, moving right along to the next fight. We got Jessica Andrade taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. This is going to be a home fight for Jasmine Jasudavicius, and I think it's quite frankly a setup fight for her. Jessica Andrade, she's going to go out there and just try to take your head off. But I think Jasmine's going to be ready for that. She's going to be able to mix up those takedowns and really get it to the ground, where she's going to do her best work here. I could see her getting a submission victory here against Jessica Andrade, or TKO, similar to what we saw last week with Jillian Robertson. Just once she gets into the match, she's so good controlling her opponent on the ground that Jessica Andrade, I just don't know what she really has to bring to the table besides power. She's not very technical, but yeah, I could see Jasmine Jasudavicius either getting a submission, or honestly, the more likely path to victory is just laying on her for 3 rounds. Could win a decision here, especially in Canada. Gonna want to play it safe. And yeah, we saw her go to the scorecards with Mayra Bueno Silva, so I'm gonna say Jasmine Jasudavicius by decision here. She has good enough striking defense to hang with Jessica Andrade, and also good enough takedowns to get her to the ground and control her there for 3 rounds. So pretty straightforward fight here. You do have a puncher's chance if you're taking Jessica Andrade, but I'd say the safest pick here, and my most confident pick right now, is going to be Jasmine Jasudavicius. Money line, I would say decision is also a good play too. But yeah, that fight's pretty straightforward. Moving right along here. We got another Canadian fighter going at it, Mike Malott. Mike Malott, he did have his fight where he kind of got fraud checked a little bit by Neil Magny, but recently he bounced back from that, putting on a pretty lackluster performance, I would say, but technical against Trevin Giles. It was definitely dominant, but it just wasn't as exciting as you would want to see from Mike Malott. And we get him taking on Charles Radtke here, who's actually a very good fighter, and just had a hiccup against Carlos Prates, which is not bad at all. As we've seen, Carlos Prates has made a crazy run, and unfortunately he was just on the bad side of a highlight there. But beat Matthew Semmelsberger as he should have. Matthew Semmelsberger, not really UFC level. And Charles Radtke gets a real step up in competition here to see what he's really made of against Mike Malott, who's striking coach over at Team Alpha Male. Good grappling, got good striking, good leg kicks. But I think you're going to get a real dog here in Charles Radtke, who just goes out there and tries to take out his opponent. And Mike Malott's more of a point fighter. He doesn't really have that dog in him like Charles Radtke does, so interested to see how this one plays out. It being in Canada, I feel like if it does go to the scorecards, they're going to be more likely to give it to Mike Malott. But Charles Radtke has a real chance to knock him out here, and that's actually going to be my prediction. I think he's going to find one of his hooks and put Mike Malott out in Canada, in his home country, and that would be something crazy to see Charles Radtke on the mic in Canada. A lot of people on Tapology agree with me here by KO, Charles Radtke, so I'm going to be taking him. I think he is an underdog still. Yep, Charles Radtke plus 180, so that's going to be another underdog pick I'm taking this week against Mike Malott. I think Mike Malott's pretty technical. We could see him, similar situation to Navajo Stirling, where you got the more technical guy against a guy that is going to go out there and try to mix it up and really just try to take your head off, which is what you're getting with Charles Radtke. So Charles Radtke by KO is my official prediction for this fight. Alright, moving on to the featured, or not the featured prelim, Marc-Andre Barriault versus Bruno Silva. And this is a fight where it's just two guys on crazy loss streaks going at it. 3 losses in a row for Marc-Andre Barriault and 4 losses in a row for Bruno Silva. Most recently, Marc-Andre got brutally knocked out by Joe Pyfer and Dustin Stoltzfus, so his chin is really in question. You're going to be getting good cardio with Marc-Andre Barriault, good clinch game, knees, and control time. And with Bruno Silva, you're just getting a guy that's kind of been a punching bag as of lately. He's just been tough, but hasn't really put up much offense on his own. So I really think this is a setup fight for Marc-Andre Barriault to get back on track in his home country, and I think that's what he's going to do here. He's been training at Kill Cliff, so obviously getting in good rounds with solid guys at middleweight. Guys like Gregory Rodriguez, he's training with consistently, so I have to think that he's going to have a big bounce back performance here. Probably win by decision. Bruno Silva is pretty tough to get out of there, so I'm going to have to take Marc-Andre Barriault by decision here. I think Bruno Silva is about as easy as it gets at middleweight right now, so if he can't take out Bruno Silva, I really don't know what Marc-Andre Barriault is going to be doing in that division. And then moving on to the next fight, which is the featured prelim actually, so we got Brad Superman Katona taking on Bezkat Almakhan. And Bezkat Almakhan took his UFC debut against Umar Nurmagomedov, which is very impressive. He actually had some good moments in that fight, and I'm interested to see what he can bring here to the table against a guy like Brad Katona, who's fought a lot of tough opponents in the UFC, got a lot more UFC experience than Bezkat does. And I think this is honestly going to be a very close fight in Canada, so you could see some sketchy scorecards if it's Brad Katona holding him down but not doing much damage. It's Bezkat doing the more damage. You could see the scorecards go in Brad Katona's way and have like a sketchy decision here, which is honestly what I'm thinking. Brad Katona's fought some tough competition. Jun Matsumoto most recently. That was an absolute war. And I think it's going to be a similar type of fight with Bezkat Almakhan, except I think Almakhan is a better prospect when it comes to well-roundedness. And I think he can actually get it done here. Umar Nurmagomedov's not a bad loss at all, but I think Bezkat can actually knock out Brad Katona, even though it's very tough to do. I think he can keep it on the feet. Brad Katona is a good wrestler, but so is Almakhan. I think he's going to be able to keep it on the feet and piece up Brad Katona, and in the later rounds he could probably knock out Brad Katona. Just a lot of damage being done, and I could see Brad Katona going down in the 3rd round here to a TKO win for Bezkat Almakhan. So that's going to be my official prediction, Bezkat Almakhan by KO in the 3rd round. All right, we got a four fight main card here, so not too much more to go over. But we're starting off with a banger. We got Jose Aldo, the King of Rio, taking on Aiemann Zahabi in Canada. So this will be a good fight. Obviously, you got Jose Aldo with a frustrating split decision against Mario Bautista, where he got held against the cage, and a similar loss where he got held against the cage by Merab. So two guys that kind of set the blueprint for how to beat Jose Aldo. And it's interesting to see if Aiemann Zahabi is going to try to do the same thing against him, or if he's going to try to go out there and strike with him, which is not a very smart idea if you know who you're dealing with here. We got a tri-star guy in Aiemann Zahabi, so he should have a pretty good game plan going out there. Those guys typically like to strike though, so if it's a striking matchup, obviously you gotta favor Jose Aldo here, and I like a bounce back here for Jose Aldo. I think he's gonna be able to implement those leg kicks, keep it at range. I do see Zahabi trying to mix it up a little bit and get Jose Aldo at least against the cage, but I have to feel like Jose Aldo's worked on that a little bit recently, seeing how he's lost those fights. He'll hopefully be able to get off the cage and keep it at range, landing those leg kicks, landing those signature punches that he always lands, and I think cruising his way to a decision here against a tough striker in Aiemann Zahabi, who's been on an absolute tear, beating guys like Javid Basharat and Pedro Munoz most recently. So tough guy here for Jose Aldo, but I still think he's got more in the tank. I don't think he's done by any means, and can't give up on Jose Aldo, so I'm going to be taking him here by a decision. Moving right on to Alexa Grasso taking on Natalia Silva. We got a former title challenger in Alexa Grasso, who most recently has had a trilogy with Valentina Shevchenko, so we haven't seen her against too much other competition. Got Natalia Silva, who's just been on an absolute tear in the UFC, beating Jessica Andrade, looking really good against Viviane Araújo, beating Andrea Lee, just cruising to decisions here. She also has some knockouts, very impressive knockouts as well. And then Alexa Grasso, just don't know where she's at right now mentally after taking that loss to Valentina Shevchenko. Have to think she might be questioning herself a little bit, and I think that's going to be the big difference here. Is Natalia Silva is full of confidence. She also has a taekwondo background and should be able to keep it at that range here. And Alexa Grasso is more of a boxer. I think if she has any chance here, she's going to have to go to the grappling, which I just don't like her chances trying to take down Natalia Silva. I think Natalia Silva's takedown defense is really good and should hold up here. I like Natalia Silva to keep it at range, land the more meaningful strikes, mainly kicks here, and win a decision. I think she should have some pretty big moments. She likes to mix up like the spinning kicks as well. So look for those, look for the leg kicks, and Natalia Silva's kicking game should get her a win here against a very tough opponent in Alexa Grasso. So that's my official pick, is Natalia Silva by decision there. And moving on to the co-main event, we got Valentina Shevchenko taking on Manon Fiorot for the women's flyweight title. Valentina Shevchenko is no slouch at all. She has been at the top of the women's flyweight division for a long time. But we do have Manon Fiorot, who's been on an absolute tear in the women's flyweight division, making Erin Blanchfield really look like a can, which I was very high on Erin Blanchfield. I actually took her in that fight. I thought she would be able to get it to the ground. She was not. Manon Fiorot boxed her up and had a very dominant decision there, which I was very surprised to see. And that made me a Manon Fiorot believer. So she's just very big for the division. I think even in the face-off, she looks really big compared to Valentina Shevchenko. So that's going to be something to watch. I think Manon's going to actually be able to strike with Valentina. she can also mix up the wrestling if she needs to. She's going to be way bigger everywhere, and she's like has a lot of power too, compared to Valentina, who's more of a point fighter, I would say. So I like Manon Fiorot, even though she doesn't really have that 5-round experience or much of it yet, to go out there and put on a pretty dominant performance against Valentina, who's getting up there in age. She's 37 years old, still very dangerous, and I know what she's capable of, but I'm a big believer in Manon Fiorot, and I think that she can or I don't know if it's considered an upset. I think right now she's actually the betting favorite, so it wouldn't be an upset, but I like Manon Fiorot to go out there and win the title in Canada. There's a lot of French-speaking Canadians out there, so I think they did that on purpose, but yeah, I think she can get the win here and dethrone Valentina Shevchenko, and there's going to be a new women's flyweight title holder, which will be fun to see, hopefully. We'll have to wait until Saturday to find out. And now moving on to the main event, where we've got Belal, remember the name, Muhammad, taking on Jack Della Maddalena. And Belal both these guys have been on crazy runs. You just have to look at Belal and who he's beaten recently to get to the title. He's beaten an undefeated prospect at the time, Sean Brady, who's looked amazing in his last fight against Leon. He beat Vicente Luque, who's always a tough guy in the welterweight division. Stephen Thompson beat him as well. And he's like chain wrestling in most of these fights. Gilbert Burns, that fight, he mainly kept it on the feet. And he was actually able to outstrike Gilbert Burns because I think he had a broken hand in that fight, but still nonetheless an impressive win, 30-27 across the board. And then Leon Edwards, pretty dominant performance in front of Leon's home crowd. But then on the other side, you got Jack Della Maddalena, who's also been on a crazy run. He's beat Gilbert Burns, KO'd him actually, instead of beat him by decision like Belal did. Got on a split decision with Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland at 170 looks really good right now, so that's not bad at all. Kevin Holland's always a tough opponent, and he struck with them for a while, so Jack Della Maddalena's boxing does look really good. He had some crazy combinations in those fights. You're always going to see that. I think you're going to see it a good amount here. I think this is going to be actually a closer fight than a lot of people are thinking, with Belal's ability to just chain wrestle. People think he's just going to put on a boring performance here, but I think he's going to be able to strike with him, and we're actually going to see some good exchanges. Belal's boxing is very underrated, so you're going to see a boxing showdown here between two good strikers. Belal's just going to have that ability to mix it up if he needs to, which I think gives him a slight edge in this fight. And I think that's going to be the difference here, is his ability to get takedowns when he needs to. He's going to have some good moments on the feet. So is Jack Della Maddalena, but when he needs to, he's going to be able to get the fight to the ground and just secure those rounds and ultimately win a decision. I think that 5-round experience is going to play a big part for Belal Muhammad here, and we really haven't seen his cardio be an issue at all. It's one of the best cardios in the UFC, alongside guys like Fluffy Hernandez and Merab Dvalishvili. Those guys have crazy cardio. So does Belal, though. He's right up there with them. So no, I don't expect to see him fade at all. Even if he doesn't land a couple takedowns, he's going to persist and keep trying to get those and kind of wear down Jack Della Maddalena. We haven't really seen that yet. We haven't seen anyone wear on him. But I think in a 5-rounder, you're going to see it. You're going to see Jack Della Maddalena start to breathe a little heavy, and Belal start to take over a little bit on the feet, like we saw Merab do with Umar. He started to land some good combinations there, and I think we're going to see that here. The cardio kind of play an effect, and the striking start to be a little bit, or open up a little bit for Belal Muhammad. So my prediction is going to be Belal Muhammad by decision. I know he gets a lot of his wins by decision, only one or a couple of TKO victories, but got to take Belal by decision against Jack Della Maddalena. And that caps off my predictions here. gonna give you guys a pretty safe parlay to lock in before I head out. I like Jasmine Jasudavicius money line, and I also like Belal Muhammad money line. Those are my two most confident picks. You can parlay those together. It should give you just about even money, as long as the lines haven't moved by the time this is posted. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps out. Give me your most confident predictions in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.